This is our exhibition, La Huella Magistral, Homage to Master Printmakers. This exhibition was a donation from the Consejo Gráfico, which is a national collective of printmaking workshops, as well as works from our permanent collection. And one of the artists that participated in this portfolio series is Paul, and he's a graphic artist originally from Corpus Christi. He holds his BFA in graphic design for the Maryland Institute College of Art and an MA in Chicano Studies from the University of Texas. He began his career as a toy designer, working on the popular Homies toy line. And his personal work focuses on the Chicano experience and spans multimedia, including drawings, prints, film, dance, comics, and commercial graphics. He lives in Austin and works full-time in mass transit, where he draws maps, directs photo shoots, and designs fleet graphics for buses and trains. He's also a member of the Austin chapter of the American Institute of Graphic Arts and is the director of Design Ranch, a biannual outdoor creative conference. He has exhibited his work and performed on stages and participated in activist causes around East Austin and aims to preserve our history and culture in a rapidly changing urban landscape. Thank you, Paul.
Thanks. Thanks everybody for coming out on a rainy Saturday. Really appreciate y'all, and thank you to Sylvia for inviting me to come present my work. I remember studying the works of Consejo Gráfico in college and never imagined that I would ever have the opportunity to be a part of a Consejo Gráfico exhibition. So I just want to start with that and say that it's such an incredible honor to be included, to be the only Texas artist actually in this particular portfolio of works with such great artists like Malaquias Montoya and Sandra Fernandez, who presented here earlier. But anyway, I wanted to start off with that and then start getting into. I made my outline here, so I'm gonna be looking down periodically to make sure I get on track, because I love to tell the stories behind what I do, and I get really passionate about it. So if I start running around, just bear with me. I wanted to start this particular presentation with a story. I went down to Corpus to visit my parents recently, and on that Sunday morning, I decided to go to church with my stepfather, because normally my mother and I are Catholic, so when I go visit, we go to church together. But on this particular day, on this particular Sunday, I decided, let me go to church with my stepfather instead and see how they do it, because he's a Presbyterian. So I went with him, and I met a lot of nice folks, and they were coming up to introduce themselves. And this little old lady walks up to me, and she says, "Oh, what do you do?" And I said, "Well, I'm a graphic artist." And she paused for a second, looked at me, and said, "Oh, so you do paintings? You paint?" And I said, "Well, yeah, I can, but that's not really my focus. My focus is graphic art." And so she said, "Oh, well, what's that?" And trying to sum up that definition, it just came out of me instantly, and I was surprised. I said, "Well, graphic art is something that are works of art that can be easily reproduced, and that's what separates it from other kinds of mediums that you'll see in a gallery or in a museum." And so that's the point that I wanted to start with, that printmaking, graphic art, graphic design, however you want to call it, is characterized by its reproducibility. And that's what separates it from things like paintings and drawings that are one of a kind. Now, reproducibility will affect its market value because it can be made over and over again, as opposed to a painting, which there's only one of them. The flip side, the benefit of something that can be easily reproduced, is that it has greater exposure and greater accessibility. And so that's the key characteristic of the work of Leopoldo Mendez and the TGP, and also of my work, that because I've derived most of my inspiration from Leopoldo Mendez. And so I wanted to make that point right off the bat. He is my favorite artist. I can easily say that hands down, and I stare at his work in complete awe and admiration, and so that's why I chose him as the artist that I wanted to commemorate for La Huella Magistral. His work, his life is defined by collaboration, by collective collaboration and anonymous collaboration. That's another important point to make about his life. He didn't seek fame, he didn't seek wealth, he never made a whole bunch of money, and he never wanted to be in the spotlight. He preferred to be in the background, and he preferred to work with his fellow artists on collective missions and collective goals. This is happening at a time in the 1920s and 30s, the heyday of the TGP, when Mexican artists are often, from a historical perspective, Mexican artists are often compared and studied one against another or collectively. You don't often see a Mexican artist written about or spoken about or studied singularly based on their own merits. They always seem to exist as part of a collective. So you never hear about Diego Rivera without also hearing about Orozco and Siqueiros. Frida Kahlo might be the only one who actually has earned her own singular, pantheon of study separate from other Mexican artists. But Leopoldo Mendez is the quintessential Mexican artist in this regard because of the way that he collaborated and presented his work. But like I said, this is happening in a post-revolutionary period of Mexico's history that is very, very complicated. We have the Mexican Revolution, which lasted from 1910 to 1920. Immediately after that, we see this slew of assassinations and overthrown presidencies and political intrigue and all kinds of things. I have this mnemonic device that I use to remember the succession of presidents at that time, but it started with Porfirio Diaz, the dictator from 1876 to 1911. After that, we have Madero, Huerta, Carranza, and finally Obregón, who seemed to stabilize the Mexican government in the 1920s and onward. So, and then mixed into that are the heroes like Emiliano Zapata and Pancho Villa, who were also in the mix, in all those events. This is also a period where we see a great renaissance in Mexican art, not just in printmaking, but in murals, but also in dance and cinema and in writing and poetry. And so it's a really great time to be an artist in Mexico at this time. We also see a rise in the myth of the worker artist. Now, the worker artist is a unique mythological figure in Mexican art history, in modernist Mexican art history, because of his or her participation in society, in politics, in economics, in the government, and that active role is what influences artists like Leopoldo Mendez, because the work exists in a very specific historical moment that is not purely imaginative or abstract. It exists to communicate very specific messages about very specific circumstances in the government, in economic policies at the time. This is also a period where the World War I has just ended. We also the American market is on the brink of collapse. We also see the rise. The Third Reich is about to start gaining support in Germany. So the global events surrounding the 20s and 30s are also on the minds of these artists. And so the move to fight fascism, the rise of leftist politics, all these things are going on while Leopoldo Mendez is working and creating the TGP, which he founded in the 30s. In the 20s, he was involved in the Stridentist movement. In the 30s, he founds the TGP. In the 50s, he creates a book publisher that publishes books on pre-Columbian art, folk art, and so on. But really the cornerstone, I think, of his legacy is that he offers up printmaking as an alternative to muralism. Murals are such a popular medium to tell the history of Mexico, and rightfully so. I mean, you don't see murals like that anywhere else in the world than in Mexico, and so it's such a powerful medium to create this sense of cultural identity and pride, primarily for the working classes throughout the country. After the agrarian reforms and then the rise of literacy rates, we slowly start to see the mural start to become not a thing of the past, but more of a historical archival medium. But at the time, it was a very, very potent and cogent and powerful form of storytelling. It's kind of like, when we think of Facebook and Instagram as storytelling devices now, it wasn't unlike that kind of a phenomenon. However, we see printmaking rise as an alternative to that. Books, pamphlets, newspapers, broadsheets, comics, all these printed ephemera that are easily thrown away and discarded actually also carried some really powerful storytelling as well. Thanks, Sylvia, for laying out these books here. I turned the pages to some of these examples just to show you that this in particular, this is a broadsheet that features some of the calaveras that originally derived from Jose Posada. But the sense of design and typography is also an important important components of this kind of work. And that's another reason why I've been so inspired by it, because as a trained graphic designer, I don't like to create a singular figural image, figural or not. It generally seems, for me, I like to add typography to it. I like to add a message to it. And I really like symmetry. So this kind of layout where you have the symmetrical layout here with the typography that's the stuff that speaks to me. I forgot to mention the connection between Mendes and Jose Posada. Posada is like the godfather of Chicano art. He's the one who created the calaveras that are so popular now for Day of the Dead, and he was really probably the biggest inspiration for Leopoldo. And this is a print here that I particularly love. Mendes created this as an homage to Posada. This is him here in his workshop, and I saw this original in San Antonio, and I mean, I just had to, I stared at it for like an hour. I couldn't, the actual print is about this wide, and so it's just breathtaking to see the level of detail that he got in this work. But even though there's no typography in here, this is still one of my favorite works of all time because of the story that's embedded into this particular image. Posada is shown working at his table, doing his woodcut here. And meanwhile, outside, soldiers are attacking peasants in the street. And so he's gazing out the window, seeing what's going on in this historical moment, while at the same time creating art to react in response to that. So this inside and outside, this insider-outsider effect is a quintessential. What am I trying to say? It captures the story. It captures what's happening, and it's a perfect homage to Posada. So I just wanted to mention that. So Consejo Gráfico publishes these portfolios every year, and there's always a theme. This particular theme was an homage to master printmakers. So every artist in the collection chose a master printmaker to commemorate, and it could have been from any period in history. So we have a lot of contemporary artists that are highlighted as well as some more historical ones. So I chose Leopoldo. So I brought my process drawings that led me to the finished print, and so I wanted to show those so you can see how I work more or less. I have a couple of. These were some process drawings that I came up with that show the general idea of where I was going. I knew it was going to have some kind of symmetry, some kind of panel, Art Deco style panel that reflected the 20s and 30s, and then some kind of natural element that I wanted to use to frame Mendes in the background. And then of course I developed that. This is the next phase where it got a little bit more developed, where I blocked out where the typography would go, where the figure would go, and some of these other elements around here, and I'll explain that. So then from there, so this is the pencil drawing. I basically freehanded this figure to represent Leopoldo Mendes. He's often shown wearing his overalls, the uniform of the worker artist, and I wanted to show him wielding some instrument of what you might think of as like a form of defense, like a weapon or a rifle. But instead of something not something so militaristic, I decided to show him wielding his pencil as his weapon, so to speak. And at the same time pouring out the bottle of ink as the universal message of the times are changing. Something big is about to happen. You see that a lot throughout pop culture, like the spilling of the wine is a common symbol of that. So from there, I inked this on tracing paper, and I use micron ink pens to do this kind of work. So then from there, I moved into the typography, which is always one of my favorite steps in the process. And so I love going to Miller Blueprint. They have such great tools over there. And so I picked up these sheets of graph paper at Miller Blueprint, and I used that to create each individual letter form. So this is the finished, I couldn't find the pencil drawings of the letters, but this is the finished inked art of the typography. And again, I pay really close attention to typographical elements and styles. And so I used, I drew these letters in the same style as you would see in his work from that period, that time period. It has an Art Deco sensibility, and so the what do you call it? The contrast between the thick strokes and the thin strokes is also a big characteristic of that style of typography. From there, I pulled out a sheet of, this is hot press illustration board. Yes, hot press illustration board to create the basic layout of what the finished print would look like. I used these natural elements, nopales, the prickly pear cactus, blue agave, and marigolds to tell, I like to tell natural stories of Mexican culture through plants and through these kinds of. I love drawing corn. I didn't draw corn in this one, but there's a lot of corn in my work. I draw a lot of corn, and I draw a lot of nopales. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to focus on the agave as almost like a homage to the Aztec headdresses here, and then I included the nopales and the marigolds, which is the official flower of Dia de los Muertos. And then at the bottom, I added these other elements. There's these crossed machetes to symbolize the communist newspaper that Mendes illustrated for, called El Machete. And it had a lot of his woodcuts and illustrations and comics there. And in front of that, there's a rolled up sheet of paper with crossed pencils and a chisel for carving out lithographic blocks. So this is kind of like his arsenal. This is his arsenal for conveying his messages. And then I just put drapery here because I like to draw drapery, and I thought it looked kind of nice. So I blocked out the space for the typography here. I added these little protesters with their arms and their signs waving in the air, and then I took so then in Photoshop. This is one of the great things about technology. I used Photoshop to assemble letter by letter the message, which is libertad en imaginación colectiva. So this is the statement that I came up with to capture what my homage to Mendes, which is that you can achieve freedom through our collective imagination. By collaboration, we can raise all of us up and find our freedom, achieve our freedom. So then I assembled all that in Photoshop. I took that digital file with me to Mexico City, where I got to work with Arturo Negrete, who's a master printer down there in Mexico City with 75 grabados. And so I got to work with him on that shop. We chose the colors. We went through the swatch book. We picked out all these colors here, and got to meet his crew and see their equipment and all that. That connection was made through a couple friends of mine, Jill Ramirez and Harvey Mireles, who has a shop in San Antonio. And Harvey originally was going to help with the printmaking process, and then he said, you know what? I'm gonna call up my buddy Arturo in DF and see if he wants to help out with this. And so, so he said, sure. Yeah, so we went down there and hung out with him for a while and just had a great time. And so that was also a big honor to get to work with an international printmaker down there. And so really this was the final result. I was really proud to inject my own sensibility as a graphic designer into a portfolio of works that are typically more what I would think of as fine art. You know, like these are fine artists here. I'm just a graphic designer. My stuff gets thrown away, but I was proud to be able to bring some of this kind of thinking, this kind of creative thinking to a gallery space, because you don't always see graphic designers get to show their work alongside such esteemed fine artists, like real artists, as graphic designers, as we have that joke amongst ourselves, like, oh yeah, is he a real artist or is he a graphic designer? But anyway, so that's really the process there. I also wanted to mention a little bit about some of the other work I do as a result of the inspiration that I get from the Taller de Gráfica Popular from Leopoldo Méndez. Is that so? When I came to Austin for grad school, I was one of the few scholar artists. I wasn't, it's like an evolution of the worker artist, but I was a scholar artist because I couldn't stop making stuff, but I was also so fascinated by the research and the history that I decided to pursue that as like a side career. And so I had the opportunity to work for the Mexican American Cultural Center when it first opened. I was the first graphic designer to work for them in 2007. And from there, I got to meet folks like Sylvia, and I met artists all over town, and I met Roen Salinas with the Aslan Dance Company. And from there, I just started making connections. I met Luis Ordaz with Proyecto Teatro, Mario Ramirez, and at Teatro Vivo. And so these are all the artists that I have the pleasure of collaborating with now. And so I wanted to show a little bit of that stuff to explain, to demonstrate how it all comes full circle. This is my portfolio of poster art. And so I'm going to start with the more recent stuff. But this is a poster for the Austin Latino New Play Festival, which is actually next weekend. Part of my collaboration with Teatro Vivo is that now they have dragged me up on stage as a performer. So I'm actually going to be an actor in one of the plays for this festival, and try out yet another medium. And so in addition to that, these are some posters that I've done for the Aslan Dance Company. They pulled me up on stage to be a dancer with Aslan starting in 2008. So we did this trilogy of shows called the Enchilada Western, and this was the first time I put myself on one of the show posters. I played this character who was like a traveling snake oil salesman, where I would sell this tonico out of my suit, my jacket, and real sleaze bag. I had a great time playing that character. But we do some really weird, subversive stuff at the dance company. Oh, that's also me. I forgot I did this one. So I did this for the Mex American, Austin's first comics and culture convention, which happened last fall. So we're going to do it again this year, and it's probably going to be a similar poster. I'm going to use a different person this time in a different color background, but I'm going to start a series kind of like this of luchadores reading comics. This is a concert poster I did for the Live Music Foundation. So I produced a short film recently, which it just got accepted into Cine Las Americas, which is this next month, and the Cinco de Mayo weekend. So we're finally going to premiere this film. It's about 20-25 minutes long, and it's about La Perla Bar, the last Tejano cantina on 6th Street. And so I collaborated with a team of writers and filmmakers to create this project, and of course I had to design the poster for it. The catchphrase is, God willing, we'll see you tomorrow. The owner of the bar says that a lot to people coming in and out. Like, all right, we'll see you later, have a good night, God willing, we'll see you tomorrow. So, so that was a fun project as well. A bunch of Aslan stuff. lot of Aztlan stuff. Oh, this was one of my favorite ones here. Chicano Dreams, Earth, Life, and Labors of Love. I did this. This was like a sci-fi project where we took Chicano mythological characters like the revolutionary and the protester and the Tejano, the Aztec warrior, and we thought of them as otherworldly extraterrestrial figures coming down from the mothership. And so we created this whole sci-fi mythological story, and it was out there, man. It was like weird stuff, but we had a great time. And then I wanted to, I don't know if I have a copy of the, oh, okay, here we go. So I also collaborate with the Austin Saltillo Sister Cities Association and the Fiesta del Grito Foundation to create the poster art for the Fiesta del Grito, which happens at the state capitol for Mexican Independence Day. And so this was one of the posters I did back in 2013, I think. But that's another collaborative process that I've really had a great time with because, and Sylvia's part of that group as well, because I've gotten to learn from the longtime Austin activists that have set up these traditions for the community, and to be able to participate in that as the graphic designer is something that just refuels my passion and inspiration. I did a bunch of posters for the MAC for Dia de los Muertos, and this was one of them. A lot of people liked this one. It was like supposed to be like a cereal box. So Dia de los Muertos was that was the joke there. Yeah, some more show stuff for Teatro Vivo. If anybody wants to look at this, it's here. We did this comics show. I did these comic book characters. Anyway, so I could go on and on, but the point is that the inspiration that I get from my favorite artist, Leopoldo, is that you can, as an artist, I've been able to grow and evolve and improve simply because of the folks that I surround myself with. I think we all make each other better when we work together, and so that's the legacy that I'm proud to commemorate for this show. Thank you.